The Auditor General's National and Provincial Audit Report for the period 2023-2024 found that of the 415 entities that it audited, covering national and provincial government departments as well as public entities, only 34% achieved an unqualified audit with no findings, what's commonly referred to as a clean audit. 41% achieved an unqualified audit with findings, while 14% achieved a qualified audit with findings, with a worrying 9% of these entities not having made submissions to be audited, what's described as outstanding audits. Well, to unpack some of the issues for us, I'm joined by Miyelani Holeni. He's from Ntiyiso Consulting. Thank you very much, Miyelani, for joining us. So when we look at these audit category outcomes, I guess clean audit is sort of the equivalent of getting an A, but at which audit level does one need to start worrying about the extent to which one's house is in order or not in order?
Certainly, thank you very much for having me, and good afternoon to the listeners as well, and to yourself. We should get worried when we start seeing qualified audits. Some may even popularly or take a hardline stance and say unqualified with material emphasis on certain matters. But really, when you start being qualified, it means you have fallen short. And anything below the qualified status, it means that there is a huge problem. But let's maybe unpack the issue of being qualified. You know, when you are qualified, it means you have not met the standards from a financial reporting point of view. You have not met a standard, from providing evidence. You have not been able to link or create a linkage between what the various, numbers are that are being reported and what the audits have found. The various tests that they've performed have found that there is deficiency or inadequacy with regards to the reporting and so on. So the issues that we are seeing with unqualified with matters of emphasis, yes, those are serious issues, but they point to improvements and specific areas where various organs of state can start putting up efforts to improve those particular areas. And some of them will be coming through the material irregularities, which is a process that AGSA adopted to drive some of the issues that must be taken out or must be dealt with or must be finalized and must never repeat on an annual basis.
Yeah. So before we get into the major concerns, I mean, it was positive to hear from the Auditor General that the audit outcomes from the end of the fifth administration, that will have been around the 2018-2019 period, to the end of the sixth administration, which was earlier this year, had improved by quite some margin from 93 to 142. It seems that the work of the AG has seemed to, impact public sector, or to some degree, given this improvement, and also, the framing from government around the professionalization of the public sector as well.
Certainly, I think what the AG has managed to, over the years, various audits, they have managed to up the standards and at least managed to create such a nomenclature or a language and an expectation which most of the public sector entities, organs of states have managed to follow. So it means that there is success. But what is more pleasing as well is that there is a stable cohort of departments as well as entities which are always showing up when it comes to clean audits. So there is consistency, there is sustainability, and those stable core are the ones that are perhaps, at least giving the AG a base from which they can start pushing improvements from there. And then I think the quality of people that we are seeing as well at the national as well as the provincial are of such a nature that, they are able to at least grasp and work with the AG and at least get into a continuous improvement process that helps, quite a lot. So the results are indeed positive. And I think, some of the provinces that would have been least expected to have shown improvements are also showing those improvements, and the number of clean audits are being increased. And so I think it's overall the stability and the meeting of standards at national and provincial is pleasing. which may not always be the case in the other sphere of government, which is local government.
Yeah. So, but for those government departments and entities that continue not to do so well when it comes to good audit outcomes, it does seem to be the usual complaint of poor record keeping of departments' operations and finances, poor submissions of financial statements, and even, not so timeous submission thereof, or no submission whatsoever.
It points to leadership, and I think what the AG is always at pains to point out is that the meeting of standards or adhering to standards, to policies, to regulations, is a behavior that is led, from the higher echelons within that entity or within the department. Where things are not happening, it means governance. There's usually a failure at the governance level, and therefore the leadership has a lot to answer for, starting with the accounting officer, which may be the HODs or the DGs, and so on. But even higher, the ministers or the MECs ought to also answer to some of those concerns. So most of where the issues break down and in the other areas, you can ascribe a large amount of breakdowns to lack of leadership, as well as in some cases lack of skills or vacancies that may exist within the structures.
So one of the concerning issues that the AG raised was about what she described as high impact auditees, the likes of the Department of Health, the Department of Education, saying that, these continue to lag, which naturally impacts on critical service delivery.
Well, I think, health, as we'll understand, is one of the critical services. Education as well is crucial, because that's where at least you must be able to produce the quality of people that are one day going to sit in the benches where the AG auditors are sitting, or even in the benches of where the leaders of government, will be sitting. So in those critical departments, it means that there needs to be an overhaul of processes and automation to a large extent of how those processes are defined. Those departments tend to command high budgets, and I think that is the other aspect of the fact that they are high impact. If you look at the education budget for South Africa as a whole, it's greater than the budget of most countries on the African continent, and is even ranking higher up in the world. So that for that reason, we should be able to produce at least a better process management, better governance, as well as bring in the necessary skills that are able to drive those processes. And certainly it means automation remains a critical intervention that must be put in place to store those records, whether it be assets, whether it be expenditure, whether it be supply chain. And those are documents which are not a common cause, because they are used on a daily basis, and it's just a matter of driving the fact that there should be proper reporting on a monthly basis, as well as adhering to an audit plan should they want the audits are about to begin.
Yeah, one last thing, Miyelani. The Auditor General, she raised the issue of service delivery risks in the area of infrastructure, noting that 86% of the 143 infrastructure projects that her department visited in the period showed serious levels of deficiency, while also raising the worry that existing infrastructure continues not to be maintained, which is an issue that was raised by the President in his opening of Parliament earlier this year. What does this speak to? Is this a lack of capacity? Why are we continually having these problems?
So this would speak to the fact that, planning is typically poor at some of the departments, and some of the critical engineers or skills that are required to drive the planning and project managers to implement those particular projects. The other aspect is the fact that there must be a performance-based contracting of whoever is going to undertake the services, and those must be monitored on a weekly basis, to a monthly basis, to a quarterly basis, because all you have is a year to implement a budget. Of course, you have the MTREF, but you only have a year to implement a budget. So in this case, it means that, what the AG is also looking at is juxtaposing the issue of a clean audit or an unqualified audit vis-a-vis the delivery of services which is based on infrastructure. So that is always an interesting link that must coexist. It can't be a clean audit without delivery of services. But however, what we need to have is strong project management offices staffed with the necessary technical skills who are going to drive the implementation, together with a punitive or performance-based contracts that are issued to whoever the service providers may be, as well as the internal people must be held via a performance contract to ensure that they are able to deliver those particular contracts. It cannot be a lack of budget, because annually National Treasury apportions a large chunk of money to national as well as province, and a number of grants that are put in through the DORA Division of Revenue Act. So it can't be an issue of lack of resources, but it can be an issue of not having the necessary skills, as well as paying particular attention to driving the implementation of the projects with a high performance adherence.
Miyelani, thank you very much for your time and your insights there. That was Miyelani Holeni. He's from Ntiyiso Consulting.